Well, good evening. I'm going to call this Lacey City Council meeting on February 18th, 2021 to order, and we'll get started with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all. Amen.
We have an agenda and consent agenda. I don't think there's any additions or amendments. Can I get a motion?
Move to approve the agenda as posted.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the agenda and consent agenda items. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
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 Is there any opposed? The motion carries. We have an agenda. And first up on our agenda is a public service award for Sharon Cox. And I'm actually gonna take this over for Rick. So Sharon Cox has been on our planning commission from January of 2015 until December of this last year. And so tonight I'd like to recognize and thank Sharon for her service to Lacey community as a member of the Lacey Planning Commission. A planning commissioner is a volunteer position that does a lot of work for the city. The planning commission consists of 9 members and serves as the advisory board to the council related to the city's comprehensive plan, development regulations, community outreach, and they hold official public hearings, which sometimes can be controversial, and other projects the council directs them to study. The topics the commission studies range from trees, transportation, utilities, critical areas, land use, signs, climate action, economic development, and parks and recreation. So basically anything that relates to the quality of life and the vibrancy of the city. The planning commission meets twice a month to attend these meetings on a regular basis. A planning commissioner member needs to be highly dedicated. And over 140 meetings in 6 years, plus the time to review all the meeting packets, that's for sure is a huge time commitment. And so Sharon has been a dedicated planning commission member since joining the commission in 2015. The last 2 years, she was the chair. In her years of service, she has worked on projects such as the street tree ordinance update, the pedestrian crossing policy, the pedestrian and bicycle plan, the depot district sub-area plan, the 2030 transportation plan, the sign ordinance update, the Lacey carbon reduction 2 plan, the Vision Lacey 2016 comprehensive plan updates, and even the retail marijuana regulations. So these are just a few of the 40 planning projects that she participated in her 6 years on the commission. So, and Sharon was always prepared, collaborative, and open-minded in her service to Lacey, which are all great traits of a good planning commission. So I just want to extend my sincerest appreciation and thanks to Sharon for serving our community in such an important role. So thank you so much, Sharon. You would like to say a couple of words? I see you're on here.
I am, but let's.
Oops, I think you're muted there, Sharon. Well, maybe maybe she's having some technical.
I'm totally having technical difficulties. I need a 10-year-old next to me. Can you hear me?
Yes, hear you.
Okay. Oh, I miss all of you already. It has been my honor to be on the Planning Commission for the years that I have. I'm looking for other opportunities in the community to continue to participate. And I love the city of Lacey, and anything I can do to serve the city, I'm here and willing. And thank you to all for your guidance, your friendship, and making this a wonderful place to live.
Well, thank you so much, Sharon. We have a little award for you that we'll make sure we get in the mail. And sorry, we can't do this in person. That's one of the things I missed. To be able to appreciate everyone in person and thanking you. But you know, what amazing time you had on the Planning Commission, and just thank you so much for your service. We really appreciate it.
Thank you to all, and thank you for all of your service and being on City Council.
Great, thank you. We'll see you. We'll see you around for sure, Sharon.
See you around.
Yeah, she definitely deserves a hand. So next on our agenda is public comment on items not on the agenda. We didn't receive any written public comment, although I think maybe some of us received some direct personal comments today, but we did receive several people who signed up. And the first person that I have on my list is Augustine. Augustine, are you here? Can you unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and please keep your comments about 3 minutes.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, that's interesting. It's going with the profile picture. I have a webcam, but it doesn't seem to want to read. I put on a tie for this and everything.
Oh, there.
Oh, perhaps there's a, oh, wait, hang on. I just have to start video, huh?
Yep.
There we go. Much better. Okay. So I am ready with my comments when you are.
Yep, go ahead.
So my name is Augustine Dalton. I live in Lacey, but more to the point, I work in Lacey. I work in the e-commerce department of the Lacey Fred Meyer. Less edifying to tell you all what I do, I think, than to tell you a little bit about the things that I've seen. I have seen my workplace become a COVID hotspot. Back on the very eve of the pandemic, some of the first cases in Thurston County back in March of 2020, some of that was us. That was some of our employees. And what has become of the work environment in this terrifying year since the pandemic was officially declared as such? Well, I have regularly seen people come into our store without masks, disregarding the welfare of others. And I've seen certain of these same people become aggressive and violent when approached by store management. Consequently, the actual in-store requirements for customers to wear masks, maintain social distancing, limit their numbers are charitably lax and at worst non-existent. More egregiously, the other consequence of this is that I have seen my coworkers catch COVID-19, become seriously ill. I have seen multiple of my coworkers pushed by the aforementioned conditions into serious crises of mental health that either diminished or robbed them of their ability not only to do their jobs, but to function in their daily lives. I have seen the corporation to whom I am employed express utter disdain for its essential workers, with upper and corporate management intimidating their employees into silence when expressing concerns about the clear and present danger we are all in. Along with healthcare professionals, grocery workers are among the most vulnerable professional groups in this pandemic. We have landed on the grenade of COVID-19, but we did not jump, we were pushed. And all this injury I could take. Personally, my age and my hereditary background give me an advantage during this crisis. Some of my colleagues aren't as fortunate, but I'm a big boy. It's an injury that I could deal with. But the insult peppered into all of this, is that it's not even being made worth our while. I have outlined here the very real and very substantial hazards of this profession. And now I am encouraging you to support and pass a hazard pay ordinance, much like we saw in Seattle. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Next up on our public comment is Kayla.
Yes, hi.
Great. Can you please introduce and keep your comments to about 3 minutes?
Yes, sir. My name is Kayla Kirkendall. I live in Lacey. I also work, just much like Augustine, I also work at the Lacey Fred Meyers as a grocery clerk. And ever since they took away our hazard pay, it has been really dangerous on us because we are the first line of defense for making sure that customers get their essential goods. And it has made it very hard by not having a hazard pay anymore, that it has made it very difficult for us employees to try and make ends meet. I mean, with the minimum wage that we get, depending on the department, it's not enough. With the cost of living going up and the cost of essential goods going up, it makes it very difficult for us to afford anything. Where some associates like myself are having to decide whether to keep a roof over our head or food on our table. We have been on the front line of this. We were at one time considered heroes, and now all of a sudden it just feels like we're not considered heroes anymore, that we don't matter, that we're not essential, and that, you know, people in the hospital field are still receiving hazard pay, and then corporations like Kroger are threatening to close down other stores because they're trying to use an intimidation factor to push a hazard pay. So we want a hazard ordinance pay because we deserve it. We have been on the front line of this thing since it started, and we have not received anything except for occasional $100 thank you credit that's added onto our reward cards. That's basically us just giving money back to our employer. It doesn't do anything for us to, you know, be able to pay bills. There's some people that could use that credit that's been put on their loyalty cards for, you know, food or bills. We're not getting anything. It feels like it's a slap in the face. And they don't treat us like we are essential. They just treat us like we're a number. There has been numerous cases at the Lacey Fred Meyers of people contracting COVID. I actually had to self-quarantine back in December due to atypical symptoms. And my husband just recently had to quarantine as well due to an associate contracting the virus. So we're not being paid fairly.
Thank you so much for your comments, and we appreciate you coming on and giving us an update on this.
Thank you so much.
Next up is Paul Hers. You're still on mute there, Paul.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. My name is Paul Pers, and I live in the Lacey Growth Management area. My intent tonight is to thank the city, and also in particular to thank Sharon Kelly, the new Assistant City Manager. During last week's storm, we tried to put together a homeless warming shelter. I'm one of the coordinators at Sacred Heart shelter, men's shelter. And during the storm, I contacted the city, and the city responded very quickly in terms of looking at establishing a warming shelter. Unfortunately, we couldn't come up with enough volunteers to staff the shelter. Excuse me. What we were able to do was to be able to move all of our men over to St. Michael's Church in Olympia. And I think some of you may know that this is really a combination shelter that we have. Monday through Thursday, it's at St. Mike's in Olympia, and then Friday through Monday morning, it's here at Sacred Heart in Lacey. But I really want to take this opportunity to thank the city, thank Sharon, and I think one of the things that we were able to do is establish a blueprint for being able to look at starting up a warming shelter in the future if we should ever need one. So I want to thank everyone, and particularly Sharon.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, we've heard about that, and I'm sorry we weren't able to quite make that work, but I do think at least we know what the expectations would be, you know, maybe the next time we're in this circumstance. And I really hope there can be some better, you know, some coordination, and maybe that will work out next time. And thank you for all you do for our community too, Paul, and trying to make this work. It's really appreciated.
Yeah, thank you.
So that is all I have for public comments. Then I will go into our next agenda item, which is under is ordinances. Ordinance 1584, the adoption of the International Building Codes 2018 edition. I'll turn this over to Wade.
Turn this on. Turn on. Might be. Good evening, Mayor Ryder and Lacey City Council. My name is Wade Duffy. I'm the City of Lacey building official and fire marshal. Tonight, we have before us the ordinance to adopt the 2018 series of codes, which includes the 2018 Washington State Energy Code. Historically, our codes are adopted on a 3-year code cycle. This code got pushed back due to additional code development and COVID-19. In this code cycle, we have a new code section for tiny houses, which is really exciting. It's called Appendix Q. And those are homes under 400 square feet. There's an additional code requirements or relaxation of the codes is better said for the tiny houses. They're called tiny houses, actually not tiny homes. And in addition to that, we're requesting the City Council to adopt the solar ready provisions in the International Residential Code. This will be the second code cycle, if you adopt that tonight, that we have the solar ready provisions in single family dwelling units and duplexes. So do you have any questions for me?
No, I guess I don't have any questions, except I do want to highlight a letter that we actually, the City Council has sent to the governor, asking them to postpone the state side of the building codes. We actually have, they automatically have been adopted by this council, and so that's not really a part of this because those happen automatically. But the City Council did write a letter with our concerns about adopting the rest of the energy codes that are in effect right now. And we've had some discussion about this in our work session. And I did sign that letter and sent it off to the governor. That really isn't, I mean, that part of the code is automatic. So, you know, I've not passing this word, you know, has no effect on that part of it. And so I am obviously in support of updating our codes and our provisions that we've set aside. I do think it's unfortunate and that the other codes are coming into effect, and there's lots of reasons behind that. But that we don't have to necessarily get into here because there's nothing we can do to change it. But Councilmember Greenstein?
For clarification, I just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. I understand that the energy codes and the building codes in effect, whether we approve it or not, because it's come down from the state. But what we will be voting on does include the energy code, correct?
Correct.
Even though I know it's already in force as of February 1st, but we are still voting on that tonight, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so, but if we didn't vote on it, it wouldn't change. If we voted down,
completely understand.
Yeah, and so, you know, trust me, I've been thinking about this too, Lenny. But you know, and what I'm really hoping, and I just had actually a really good conversation with Wade about this yesterday when I was in City Hall, about how we can be more proactive and going forward when it comes to our concerns, you know, our building department's concerns about how we can get to the intent of this code, regardless of what's going on. And also another code update is just around the corner. And what does that mean? And have a really good conversation with this council, and to really understand what we're trying to accomplish here. And you know, I really appreciate the conversation that you and I had, Wade, about this, and where somehow there's this disconnect between people who are trying to have some more energy efficiency, and then the reality of actually implementing that. And it doesn't make a lot of sense. And so when it comes to real world application and I think sometimes that gets lost. And so I appreciate the conversation we had, Wade, and I look forward to this city having some better discussions around affordable housing and what that means, and, and separating some of the stuff out. So that being said, does anyone else, Dave, do you have anything to add to this?
Yes, just a clarification for Councilmember Greenstein. Is your question specifically to the energy code? Because that section of the Lacey Municipal Code is not included in the ordinance council is considering today.
It is not.
Yeah, it is not. Section 1409, which is specific, that's the Lacey Municipal Code, section 1409, specific to the energy code, was last adopted in 2015. And that specific ordinance, which was Ordinance 1467, adopted by reference the Washington Administrative Code, which was recently updated. So council's action today will not affect that section of the Lacey Municipal Code, nor will it affect the energy code. Just point of clarification.
No, thank you. That was an important clarification, because that I appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Dave. I didn't know if we were going to be adopting this, which automatically include language of some. I knew there was a connection there, but I just wasn't.
You did it in 2015.
Did it in 2015. That references it to it. Now it's going forward. Got it.
Okay.
That being said, is there any questions? Can I get a motion?
I move that we adopt an ordinance to amend LMC chapters 14.03 through 1407, 1409, 14.13 through 1417, and appendices incorporating the provisions of the 2018 International Building Codes as adopted by the Washington State Building Code Council.
Second.
Moving second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Is there any opposed? That motion carries, and we have amended those the City of Lacey building codes. Thank you, Wade, and appreciate it. I appreciate everything you do for Lacey, and I really do look forward to having a conversation about affordable housing and about what these actually mean. And I do think it takes a longer discussion to really understand, really kind of along the lines of what we were talking about, Wade, because I didn't quite understand what the implementation means and how that relates to real world building environments. And so I appreciate conversation, Wade.
And likewise, Mayor Ryder, thank you, City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Wade.
Next up on our agenda is under the mayor's report, and I have two actions tonight. One is the appointment to fill Karen's spot on the planning commission, and we went through a bunch of applications, and the chair and Rick and myself had interviewed several people who are all amazing. It was, we have some really great people within our community who care about our community and care about the future of our city. And it was a really difficult task this time around because there were some very strong candidates. But at the end, there was a recommendation that we appoint Kieran McMichael to the Planning Commission, and I'll make that motion.
Second.
And moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in, Councilmember Cox?
I say I heartily support your choice, and I'm very confident Kieran's going to do an excellent job on the Planning Commission.
I did too. One thing I really enjoyed talking to her is she started getting involved in talking to the city because she had some growth that was happening in her community right next to her, and seeing some new housing coming in, and she wanted to learn more about what that meant, and started talking to Rick and his department, and to understand our comprehensive plan and what the city was trying to accomplish. And so it was really good, having those conversations. talking about the future of Lacey and these tough decisions that we have, especially when it comes to zoning and upzoning and trying to get more density in our urban cores and have walkable community, all those things that we want to talk about. It was really great talking to her about those issues and hearing her perspective, which I think it's gonna be an important perspective on the council, so on the commission. So it's been moved in a second. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Is there any opposed? That motion carried. And we now appointed Karen Michael to the Planning Commission. So I really look forward to working with her in the future. The next one up is actually a reappointment of John Gresham to the Rpfd board. We have a public facilities district that oversees sort of the financial sides of the regional athletic complex and the children's hands-on museums are the two things within that public facilities district. And this is Lacey's appointment to that board, and John has served in that capacity. I think has served the city very well, and he's willing to serve in that capacity again. And so it's my recommendation that we reappoint John Gresham to the CRPFD board. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Then all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Then that motion carries and we've reappointed John to that board. And so next up on our agenda is the city manager's report.
Honorable Mayor and City Council, we have 3 items before you. The first one is the Capital City Chambers Estate annexation. Ryan Andrews, our long-range manager, is going to provide that update for you. And Ryan, I think, is coming on board.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Give me 1 second to be able to share my screen.
I can't close the lid.
Okay. All right. So again, good evening, Mayor and Council. As City Manager mentioned, this is the first step in the Capital City Chambers Estates annexation process. We're recommending tonight that you pass a motion to authorize the next step in the process, which is initializing the 60% petition, and then also.
Just for a sec, someone has their microphone off.
Yeah. Yeah, can everyone mute their microphone, please? Appreciate that.
Sorry for interrupting, Ryan.
Okay, no problem. I was just going to mention that the second part of the motion is to require that the assumption of bonded indebtedness associated with the annexation. So a little bit about the annexation itself. You can see it on your screen here. The city has filed a notice of intent to commence annexation proceedings. So this is a 10% initial petition. It's the first step in the process. The area is shown on your screen here. It includes the Capital City Golf Club Estates, the Chambers Estates, Capital City Townhomes, and Capital City Golf Course. The area is in the Horizons planning area within the Lacey urban growth area, generally located south of Yelm Highway, let's see, north of 66th Avenue, north of Horizon Point area there, east of the Chehalis Western Trail, and west of Ruddle Road. The area includes approximately 288 acres in 451 separate tax parcels. The area, as I mentioned, includes the golf course, the clubhouse and restaurant associated with the golf course, and a recreational airstrip associated with the Chambers Estate subdivision. The 2020-2021 assessed value of these properties is a little over $134 million. It's important to note, though, that annexation of this area will result in additional revenue to the city. However, it's anticipated that the expenses associated with providing city services to this area will be either equal to or greater than the revenue that's generated. Next slide here shows the number of power of attorneys that have been signed by property owners in the area. So the city has initiated this annexation on behalf of the parcels that have signed power of attorney agreements. Those are shown in pink on the screen. The power of attorneys have generally been signed, at least in the Capital City Golf Course area, associated with a sewer extension project that the city is completing in that area in exchange for waiving of some connection fees. The amount of petitions that we have equals a little bit less than $100 million, which is 74.4% of the assessed valuation that's needed for moving this forward through the 60% petition method. So 74 is greater than the 60% that's necessary. Here's an aerial photograph of the area. It's largely developed. As I mentioned, it includes a couple of subdivisions, mostly the Capital City Estates, which is located around the Capital City Golf Course, and Chambers Estates, which is located on the west side of Rainier Road, which they were both developed in and around the 1960s. The area contains approximately 470 dwelling units and an estimated population of 965 people. Here's the zoning for the area. All properties in the area proposed for annexation is zoned low density residential, 0 to 4 units per acre. The purpose of this is obviously low density residential. It's generally a single family residential designation. If the annexation is eventually approved, then the low density residential 0 to 4 zone would remain as per our agreements in place with Thurston County. The area is known as an unincorporated island. It's essentially surrounded on 3.5 sides by city limits. The only way to access this area is on city streets. So it is truly a unincorporated island that Thurston County serves, but is surrounded essentially on all sides by Lacey. If the annexation was approved, this would be the last remaining unincorporated island or area located at the south end of our urban growth area. So this would definitely solidify those boundaries. Here's the utilities. First off, sewer. Sewer service, at least shown on the map here, is fairly limited. Our mapping has not yet caught up with the sewer project that has been installed or is undergoing installation in Capital City Estates right now. So up until recently, sewer service has been mostly relatively limited, with most of the existing properties on existing septic systems, at least in the Capital City Estates part of it. On the Chambers Estates part on the west side of Rainier Road, that's still largely septic and drain field, and there's no plans to convert that with this project. Here's the water. It's within our water service area, generally well served by city water throughout both Capital City Estates and Chambers Estates. Did want to make one mention of stormwater. I don't have a map of the stormwater facilities in the area, but it's important to note that the city would take over maintenance of any public stormwater systems serving public streets. Those that are serving private streets, which most of the Capital City Estates area's private streets, would not be transferred over to the city. Wanted to just share a couple more items with you before I turn it over to you for your motion and questions. So related to police service, we did receive some information from the Lacey Police Department coordinating with the Thurston County Sheriff's Office on this. Obviously, upon annexation, the City of Lacey Police Department would take over service. This area generates about 1,100 calls per year for police service. In comparison, our police service generally responds to up to 46,000 calls for service every year. So based on that number, Lacey Police Department did not believe there was any additional need for law enforcement services to increase that associated with the annexation. For fire services, obviously we're part of Fire District 3. Capital City Estates, anything that's on the east side of Rainier Road is already in Lacey Fire District 3, so this would not change that. It is important to note that anything that's in the Chambers Estate side is actually in the East Olympia Fire District 6. And so that would be required to change upon annexation. They would be annexed into Fire District 3. With our other just like our other annexations with existing Fire District 3 properties, the recommendation is to waive the city's portion of bonded indebtedness associated with that, but we don't have to worry about that at this point. That would be if and when the annexation was finalized. The last thing I'd mention about services is that in addition to the provision of utilities, Lacey Public Works would also maintain the public streets in the area. There is approximately 1 lane mile of public streets that would be maintained. That would be a requirement for us to maintain in and around the Chambers Estates subdivision and down Rainier Road. Capital City Estates is mostly private streets, at least internally. These would remain private upon annexation. There would be no requirement, the city would not be taking on any service for serving those private streets, maintaining those private streets. And the good thing with us doing the sewer project is those streets are generally being torn up and replaced right now. So Capital City Estates is getting the benefit of some brand new streets associated with that sewer project. So as I mentioned, we're moving forward to this first step of the 10% petition, which is in front of you tonight. We do have enough for the 60% petition, but that will need to come back to you at a future date. So we do have a recommendation to pass a motion tonight, as I indicated at the beginning of the presentation. I did want to mention one last thing, which is we have scheduled an informational meeting for residents of Capital City Estates and Chambers Estates to get more information on how the annexation would affect them. That has been scheduled for Monday, March 8th at 5:00 p.m. And so if there's anybody watching that would like any additional information on that, please let me know. We are doing a direct mail to all property owners in the annexation area, letting them know about the informational meeting that'll be coming up. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I'd make a motion to proceed with the proposed Capital City Chambers Estate annexation proposal that includes the following provisions. Authorize a petition to be submitted representing at least 60% of the assessed value of the property to be annexed, and require the assumption of all or of any portion of existing city indebtedness by the area to be annexed.
I second it.
Second.
And moved and seconded. Discussion. I'll just let you know that we just did have a meeting with the Lacey Fire District 3. They knew about this annexation. This has been a conversation we've had, and they have been in contacts with the other fire district. This has always been kind of a weird boundary for the other fire district. And so this makes a lot of sense for Lacey Fire District 3 to annex this area. Otherwise, they're coming all the way around for this almost like island on that side of this thing. So I just want to give you an update that there doesn't seem to be a problem with that going forward. Councilmember Greenstein, you're on mute.
I had 2 questions, but you just answered one of them, so thank you. The second question, though, if you can go back to the aerial view, or you don't even have to really, let's see, I think it would be the northeast corner. It's kind of like a little jagged corner there. Is that already Lacey at the corner of, I'm talking about the corner of Ruddle and Yelm right there?
Yeah, it is already Lacey. Those are apartments. I forget the name of them. Capital City, maybe
Capital
apartments?
City, I think it is.
Yep, those are already
So
in
that is
Lacey.
within the city limits already. Okay, perfect.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've always had questions with that too, because it's, I don't know how it got city way back when. Anyway.
I wonder what 4-year-old drew the line.
Yeah. Deputy Mayor?
That same thing with the aerial view map. Where is the the aerial right-of-way for planes you talked about? That I've always wondered where that is, and I can't picture it on the map.
Northwest part of Chamber Estates.
So I'm just going to keep it on this map here. I know it's not easy to see, but I'm having a hard time changing it. It's just north of Chambers Estate. So it's the strip of land between, I call it the Breckenridge subdivision to the north, and Chambers Estates. It's a grass airstrip that runs east and west. So as you go down Rainier Road, going southbound, it'd be on your right-hand side before you get to the Chambers Estate subdivision. And in fact, quite a few people that own property or have property on this north side of Chambers Estates actually have small little hangars for their planes, pole buildings and that, to keep their planes in so they can access this little airstrip.
Thank you. For some reason, I thought it was on the lower right-hand corner of that section. And when I saw the map, I couldn't see how that could be, but that makes sense. Thank you.
Living over there, I watch planes take off and land there frequently. I'm sure Carolyn has seen several too.
Yep. Councilmember Miller, and then we'll go Councilmember Cox.
Ryan, does the annexation at this point require us? I know some of that section in there doesn't have any sidewalks, doesn't have any streetlights. So is this annexation going to put us in a position where we're going to have to pour some sidewalks and possibly put up some streetlights?
Not in the immediate short term. As far as annexation goes, we basically take over any public streets. So private streets those don't change. Those are the responsibility of private property owners. So we would be eventually, responsible through our, street improvement projects to put in infrastructure improvements in our streets. Those would be prioritized just like with any other city project, grants or other things that would pay for that. So yes, we would, and be taking on some additional potential cost with that. There's no requirements that say we have to do that with that in any certain amount of time or anything like that associated with the annexation. Streetlights, I don't think I mentioned streetlights in the presentation. If it's a private streetlight on a private street, those are not for the city to take over. If it is a public, or if it's on a public street, the city would pay for the light service associated with that. And so you could include like the LED change out of those lights and those kinds of things. Those would be our costs and our responsibility to do.
Okay, so that back road, that big long one, is that a private street or a public street?
You're talking about 66th Avenue?
I believe so.
That goes between Horizon Point and the golf course?
Yes.
So that's a public street that's already in the Lacey city limits. So we already own and maintain the right of way in that stretch. So we would not be inheriting that with this annexation. We already maintain that stretch of roadway.
And then the one that goes from where the stop sign is back to Ruddle Road, where Ruddle Road turns to Lacey, where we used to have that little satellite police station thing.
Yeah, so that's already all in our right of way. So really, the only thing we are taking over would be the stretch of Rainier Road between the Beckenridge subdivision and 66th Avenue, and then the internal street that's in the Chambers Estate subdivision. So again, just like 1 lane mile, which is basically a half mile of 2-lane street.
And that would be 67th and 64th, or 62nd and 64th.
Yeah, and then there's Sugar Maple, which is the other part of that within Chambers Estates.
Councilmember Cox.
Ryan, I was really happy to hear that you talked about the community outreach component with this. Can you tell us a little bit more of what that will consist of?
Sure. So a lot of it will be information provided by us in terms of the main thing people care about is, how is this going to kind of affect me financially? And then how is this going to affect my services? So it'll be myself and a couple members of our Public Works Department. My role will be to provide information on changes to taxes, property taxes, and utility taxes, as well as the changes to the services. And really the main change to services is kind of twofold. One is Public Works and the other is Police Department. And so that's some information will be provided there, as well as from our Public Works Department, a little bit of additional information on the status of the sewer project that's undergoing right now, because I think people will have questions about that. So we'll provide some information, and then we'll also have the ability for people to ask questions in that. So like with the other forums that we've done lately, we have kind of the chat, the Q&A that's people are able to type questions in and ask questions directly to us. If they do have questions, and then we'll also record it and put it on our YouTube page after the fact.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Councilmember Greenside.
Just one other quick question. Doesn't our police department respond to a pretty high percentage of the calls in there already anyway, because of the proximity and the substation right there and everything?
Yeah, of course. So I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but we do have mutual aid agreements with Thurston County. If they're more than a certain amount of time away, then our police department provides service. So yeah, we're already providing some service to this area already.
Thank you.
I think too, I didn't really bring it up, but there is kind of an equity issue that a lot of this area is provided with city services. Like Councilmember Greenside said, we're already providing a little bit of police service. They're using our streets to be able to access their homes. They're undoubtedly using our other city facilities, parks, and those kinds of things. So I think it makes a lot of sense from a kind of a fairness standpoint that they're getting some services that they're not necessarily paying for. That'll kind of close that gap and bring them more in line with the services that are provided. They'll be able to fund those.
Well, and of course, they will have the privilege of being represented by this great council too. So that's invaluable. Councilmember Sedman.
A little history lesson. I believe it was 91. My twin brother and I were young Marines off active duty. Got to come home and visit our dad on 64th Avenue there. And there was a plane accident at the airport there, right on Rainier Road. And who was the first responders? It wasn't Lacey Fire District 3 at the, hadn't been annexed at that point, but it was our fire service. So not at East Olympia at first, because whoever's closest, those are the ones that come. So yeah, we're doing the service already, and so it just makes sense.
Any other questions? It's been moved in a second to approve this motion to proceed with a proposed Capital City Chambers of State annexation proposal. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
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 Is there any opposed? Then that motion carries. Thank you,
Thank you.
Ryan. Next up is, let's see.
So next item, we have Scott Ager is going to talk about a bid award for Carpenter Road utility work.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. Let me share a screen here for a sec. All right. So you have before you Public Works Project PW 2021-04. These are water and sewer installation and replacement.
Hey, Scott,
yep.
Your screen change is showing Microsoft Teams.
Speed dial.
Does that work?
Not quite.
There you go.
Okay. All right. Yeah, technical difficulties. Anyway, this project is being constructed ahead of the TBD overlay project this coming summer. So staff is recommending award to Pape & Sons of this contract in an amount of $1,047,187.74. There are 15 bidders on this project, and there are 60 working days. Contractors expected to start in April and then wrap things up late June, early July. So this shows a map of the project. So the wastewater work, there's 4,000 feet of 6-inch step sewer main, and that will run from Stanfield to 37th Avenue. And as you know, this is located just south of the fairgrounds. The water work will include 3,000 feet of 12-inch water main and sorted other diameter pipe. And then the paving, there is over 500 tons of paving, basically patch back, but then this road section will be completely overlaid during the summertime as part of the TBD overlay program. This map shows the utilities ending down around 37th, which is accurate, but the overlay program will extend all the way down and tie into the new roundabout project. So that will be basically new pavement from the fairgrounds down to the new roundabout. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Get a motion?
I would move to award Lacey contract number PW 2021-04 to low bidder Pape, yeah, that's E silent. And Sons Construction Incorporated from Gig Harbor Washington, in the amount of $1,047,187.74. Thanks for the help, Scott.
Anytime.
Second.
Moved in second. Is there any discussion? So obviously this has been an area that's needed this for a bit. Why are we doing it now? Just because, are we doing it now because we knew that this was really needed and we didn't want to tear up the road later, or what was the decision behind this?
Oh, we have, projects laid out a couple of years in advance. So, and this is highly needed. This section of Carpenter Road has some of the lowest pavement condition index ratings, of all of our arterials in the city. So it's been in the queue, it's time, and it is a priority.
No, I'm just saying, but on the utility side of things.
Oh, yes. So,
I understand that for sure that we're on the roadside, but are we doing this like because we knew they're going to pave it later and didn't make sense to come back and tear up the road, or?
Absolutely. So it's just part of our coordinated effort. We want, we want to minimize disruption, to our residents in terms of how many times we're tearing up a road. And obviously we do want to put in the utilities before we pave the road. So we just two things. One, to minimize disruption, not to string out construction over a number of years, doing water, then sewer, then road. But to kind of gang it up together and then make sure we get the utilities in before the road goes in.
Got it. Councilmember Seven.
That was my question, is what is the current rating? It's got to be less than 70%. That section of Carpenter's maybe not as bad as where the bus barn is up north, but
I don't have the state of the streets report in front of me, but I'd guess that there's a section of Carpenter Road that's down in the 50s easily.
So that would raise our average by quite a bit.
It'll definitely help.
Almost a mile. So.
Yeah. Is there any other discussion? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of that motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you very much.
So the last item before council, we have the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan Phase 3 work that was discussed at our last work session. Jessica Brand, our associate planner, is going to provide the details on this.
Hi, good evening, Mayor, Council. This agenda item is about the Regional Climate Action Plan, Phase 3 interlocal agreement, and the recommendation is to authorize the city manager to execute interlocal agreement between the cities of Lacey, Olympia, Tumwater, Thurston County, and Thurston Regional Planning Council for Phase 3 of the Regional Climate Mitigation Plan. This is for regional coordination. So Phase 3 is a one-year agreement, scope of work that will focus on regional implementation options and approaches. And this agreement, of course, doesn't preclude ourselves, jurisdictions from prioritizing and implementing actions individually on top of this. So this agreement provides funds for TRPC staff to continue convening, researching, engaging, and monitoring as directed by the partner jurisdictions. And the major tasks in the scope of work are project management coordination for the multi-jurisdictional staff team, so information sharing, invoicing administration, also facilitating the Climate Action Steering Committee, which would be the advisory body to the four parties. And so they would advise TRPC, and TRPC would facilitate that conversation and convene. Task 3 in the scope of work is for policy research support. We just got to flesh out some further details for our regional approach to climate implementation planning. And this would provide a huge lift for us for doing some policy research and ideas for implementation with more details. And task 4 is really about developing a monitoring and assessment program for our regional plan so that we can figure out how to monitor this long-term, and then of course provide annual progress reports. And the last task is for public outreach. So TRPC would post websites, host events, information sessions, etc. Continue the work we've been doing for the past couple of years. And so the recommendation is to authorize the city manager to execute an interlocal agreement between the cities of Lacey, Olympia, and Tumwater, Thurston County, and TRPC for Phase 3. And I'm happy to take questions.
Can I get the motion?
I move that we authorize the city manager to execute an interlocal agreement between the city of Lacey, City of Olympia, City of Tumwater, Thurston County, and Thurston Regional Planning Council for Phase 3 of Regional Climate Mitigation Plan Regional Coordination.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We obviously we talked about this in quite a bit of length at our work session last week. Is there anything else that needs to be added to this, Councilmember Greenstein?
I just have a comment, not a question. I have a problem with this, and as I discussed at the work session, but I cannot support this before the work of our planning commission is done. Can't support us spending more money on this regional plan before our planning commission, our Lacey Planning Commission, has done the work of reaching out to the public in Lacey and of doing the work to find out what the cost of implementation of these items are, which we've not heard anything about in any of the previous information. So
we discussed this last Thursday. Councilmember Kunkel, and I know you have the same.
And I'll make an additional comment. I just don't believe that we've done enough to really gather the public support for this effort, and to have an interlocal agreement. It just just seems public be damned, and so I will also be voting no.
So, we've had discussion on this, Councilmember Sedman.
Is my okay. I wanted to add that under the phase 3, the 4 categories, one is conducting public outreach, and there's a lot of angst and concern because no one knows what the implementation looks like, let alone costs or impacts, and that's what this phase does. So it gives us most of the information we need to make an educated decision on what we implement, if anything, on this plan. So I'm 100% supportive of this. Way better to have more information than less or none.
And we had this conversation last Thursday, and I think this is just a philosophical disagreement. I too agree that this doesn't hold this council to anything. It helps us coordinate. It helps us with more outreach. It helps, with the development of a regional monitoring plan and assessment program. I don't see any downside to this. I understand where you're coming from, Councilmember Greenstein and Kunkel, but I think this would be a smart move for the city.
You don't see any downside to this? Is that what you said, Mr. Mayor?
No, it doesn't hold the city of Lacey to anything, but it gives us more information. We're ways away from adopting this plan. This is just helping us set the stage and give us some more information to adopt the plan. And so it doesn't hold us to anything. We've had this conversation. I have a motion and a second. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
That motion carries.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Just one final comment, Council. So I'd just like to publicly recognize and thank the Public Works Department. 15 inches of snow is pretty unusual for our area. And I would say by all measures, the response was pretty phenomenal given the equipment that we have and the amount of snow. And obviously weather did help by clearing it up by at least by Tuesday. But just want to thank Scott Ager and his crew. That was a 24-hour operation for at least 5 days, not just the streets, but the parks and also facilities. So just wanted to make that comment.
Great, thank you. And yes, once again, our public works staff did an amazing job, and I braved the roads a couple times, and of course all the arterials were really clear, and they did a great job. And so we really appreciate all the hard work they do. Next up is standing general committees. First up is the Community Relations and Public Affairs Committee.
All right, Mr. Mayor, I will say that the roads were better than Spokane and Yakima, for sure. So Public Relations and Community Affairs Committee met on February 1st. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe turn off your video.
Yeah.
That might help it.
Yeah, there you go. All right. And we had first 3-item agenda. One was election of officers. We didn't change any, so I remained the chair. And then we had a brief on COVID vaccination sites. It's pretty complicated with the Department of Health, but they're, with the help of the National Guard and supporting up pop-up sites and et cetera. But the gist of it was vaccination sites for phase 1 are at the fire station number 34 by the rack, and they're using the rack as a staging site. People have to bring their proper paperwork, but it's recommended that individuals keep checking the DOH website for vaccination sites and additional information. It's been a couple weeks, so there's probably some more current information. And then we had Steve Kirkman with Public Affairs present a strategic communications plan and parks outreach plan. And Jen gave an information brief about this, and the Lacey Comprehensive Strategic Plan, Communications Plan will guide the community in engagement and public involvement activities by identifying city communication goals, target audiences, best practice and tools, proposing standardized, consistent approaches where applicable, define essential messages and core themes based on public interest, and defining performance indicators to evaluate the process. And also they have the Lacey Cares Community Engagement Initiative, which includes providing an opportunity to broadly engage with community members, serving as a first step in the COVID-19 reset, identifying topics and interests the community wants to learn more about, and learning how the community members believe Lacey can build a more resilient, connected, and prosperous community moving forward. And then Lacey Cares Initiative would be dependent to some degree on COVID restrictions. Some combination of the following activities are envisioned: online surveys, social media campaign, community group interviews, idea boxes, all at high level volume traffic sites, and intercept surveys at community events. And then what else? This implement plan will provide information, clarify public priorities, build a better vision, include robust and diverse public outreach, and assemble an outreach team. The Gray Coolio Park and surrounding park properties master plans include 537 acres in Northeast Lacey, and it will include public and stakeholder input, a robust and diverse public outreach, and will be assembled and will assemble an outreach team. So that's just one of the things that this plan will help with. So that is my report.
Thank you. Next up is the Utilities Committee. Councilmember Kunkel, I think you're chair.
Yep, I am. Thank you. I'm just getting my bearings here. So our Utilities Committee met February 1st, and I had the honor of serving as the chair of that committee. And our topic of discussion was what we had just voted on as a council for the Capital City Chambers of Estates Annexation project. And that was pretty much the gist of our meeting. And that is my report.
Great. Thank you so much. Now we're going on to boards, commissions, and committee reports. I'm up first. I did have a mayor's forum the first Friday of this month, and we were joined by the chair of the county commission, and it's always a good time to talk about issues within our communities. And we had a conversation about a couple different items there, but nothing to report out to this council. But the Transportation Policy Board did meet on February 10th, right early at 7 a.m. We have several items on the agenda, and just like you were seeing at a lot of these intergovernmental committees, there's the decision to decide who's going to be chair and vice chair. And I was once again nominated to be chair of the Transportation Policy Board. What I guess I didn't realize that I was being nominated for my 10th year as the chair of the Transportation Policy Board, which is I have no idea where time has gone. It does not seem like it's been 10 years that I've been the chair of the Transportation Policy Board, but I was once again unanimously voted to be chair of the Transportation Policy Board. There was a runoff between Graham Sackerson and for vice chair, and the Olympia City Council member. And it was actually a pretty close vote, but Graham was selected as vice chair. This is going to be his last year on the Transportation Policy Board. However, so this will be his last year as vice chair. We also have a Amherst business representative, who's Doug DeForest. He's been serving with the Transportation Policy Board for 2 decades, over 20 years. I mean, it's just been amazing. Which is why this position was created. And he is now going into a non-voting role, but will serve another year. And he also said that this will be his last year serving with the Transportation Policy Board. And so that will be the end of over 2 decades of service from the private sector on the Transportation Policy Board, helping us have a cohesive network of transportation throughout Thurston County. And so I can't say enough for all the work Doug has given our community for over 20 years. And so, but our main items on our agenda was the state of our transportation systems when it comes to our sidewalks. And so the TRPC recently completed a state of our transportation systems sidewalk evaluation. They present that the findings of the study, which identified the presence or absence of sidewalks on major arterials and collectors within the urban growth areas of the Thurston County cities. And then they also provided a tour of the data presented on the TRPC website, as well as an interactive map, which displays the current conditions of those sidewalks throughout Thurston County. And that was, you can go on the TRPC website and find that. That was a really nice presentation, which led us really into a sidewalk policy discussion. So, many of our existing major roads are still missing sidewalks. And so there was conversation about, the retrofitting of the sidewalks network is also funded by a patchwork of sources. And the difficulty when it comes to TRPC and the dollars that we deal with is they're federal dollars, and federal money is really expensive to use. Right? This is sort of this ongoing conversation we're always having, is how expensive it is to use federal funds. And first of all, I think that is, I think it's way too burdensome to use federal dollars. I think there needs to be a more streamlined approach to using federal dollars, especially in the state of Washington, where our CEPA is greater than the federal guidelines. And so to have to do our Washington state guidelines and then do our federal guidelines has never made a lot of sense in my mind. And so it's been a sort of a pet peeve of mine over the years. And so using federal dollars for sidewalks isn't necessarily the best use of those dollars. And so there's a policy discussion that we're having as we're leading up to this future rounds of how we use our federal funds within Thurston County. There's an expectation of some performance measures and some other things that we are going to now have to take into effect. And so there was some policy discussion on what do we do with sidewalks. And I think out of that discussion really came, well, maybe we should focus on, the areas that really need it the most. So, maybe that's sidewalks that are missing, key sidewalks that are missing, like on ways to schools, or that are on a major transit line, and all of a sudden the sidewalk disappears. And so we just sort of got into that discussion, and of course then we ran out of time. And so I think that there'll be more discussion on that going forward, but it's really difficult because federal dollars are really expensive. And so to try to figure out how we solve this with federal dollars is I don't think necessarily going to be the solution, unless we can come up with some policies where we can swap out these federal dollars for local dollars, where then we can maybe set aside some of that money so we can do these sidewalks. I think there is a universal agreement that we need to find those, fix those areas that need sidewalks. It just really comes down to funding. How do we figure out the dollars to make sure we can make those connections? And I think there'll be more to come on that in the future. So that is my report. And next up is the Deputy Mayor.
So Lot Clean Water Alliance met February 10th in the evening. And of course, we had our work session before our business meeting. We had a briefing of the draft 2021 work plan. And this includes a cost of service analysis, or will include finalizing the reclaimed water infiltration study, or coming close to finishing it. Continuation of the biological processes improvement project, and of course, master planning. We also had updates on Ecology's draft Puget Sound nutrient general permit. As you know, Ecology implements the MPDES permit for EPA. And while other Puget Sound wastewater treatment plants are really uncomfortable up and down Puget Sound with the general permit, Lot actually is in pretty good condition because we pretty much do all the requirements. So we won't be affected much by the proposed permit. Staff also gave an update to Lot's 2020 revenue and looking at effects of COVID. And luckily, because of conservative planning in the past, we weren't badly affected. And then the last update was the management, that management is requesting the state to prioritize wastewater staff equal to teachers for vaccinations. And this is because COVID-19 shows up in the wastewater, and they feel there is concern that they could be infected as a consequence. They've reached out to the state, but haven't heard anything back from this. At our business meeting, it was a really short agenda. We elected our officers, and Tumwater Mayor Pete Komet is our new president. I'm really pleased about that because he's, he's an past engineer, and he's really enthusiastic about wastewater, which is kind of funny, but I think he'll be great. And I was reelected as vice president, and I was also reappointed to TRPC as Lot's representative. Olympia's Lisa Parsley is now the new representative to the Capitol Lake Estuary EIS Steering Committee for Lot. And then the last item on our work session was, our business meeting, I'm sorry, was a showing of a couple of the 7 videos that Lot staff put together. And the first was a 15-minute tour of the Lot wastewater treatment plant. And there was a shorter version titled, "What is the Lot Clean Water Alliance?" which is a 1.5-minute video. And the other videos included how Lot cleans wastewater, 5 key steps, how Lot produces resources for wastewater, which is about reclaimed water, what not to flush, and then clean water careers at Lot, and an appeal to the younger generation to pique their interest in wastewater careers. Meet Lot's wastewater superheroes. And I'm saying these because they were really, really well done videos. I'm really impressed. And I hope not only council members take time to look at them, but the audience will also. I don't really get impressed by videos like that, but they were really, really well done. And the thing is, 2 of them particularly, especially what not to flush, is so important. And then the 2 career videos were really well done. And one of the big issues by the Energy, Environment, and Natural Resources Committee with NLC is the discussion about how many of career engineers are near retirement. And so it's really hard to fill those positions. And so one of the ways I think these two videos will help, is to encourage people to say this is a career they could go into. And these videos can be found at lotcleanwater.org. And I think if you just type in lot clean water, you'll find that. And they're right up in the front of their, I think on their first page. The Olympic Region Clean Air Agency, or ORCA, met February 10th in the morning, and we had a really good discussion on outdoor burning. As you probably remember, you can't burn outdoors in the boundaries of Olympia, Tumwater, and Lacey and their UGAs. You can't burn in a barrel either. That's totally against the law. And you need a permit for Thurston County and unincorporated areas. And because Thurston County is the most populous area of the 6 counties, there's certainly a philosophical difference between, say, Pacific County and us. But because we're so populous, the air quality is way worse if there's a lot of outdoor burning. Let's see. There were numerous complaints, and the complaints have gone up in 2020 for outdoor burning, probably because people are staying home more and noticing it more. So when they deal with complaints, just so it's clear, ORCA tries to change behavior through education first. And there's a really cool map on their website that you could go to see if you're inside or outside of the permitted area. So if obviously on council, we're inside the area, but our audience may be just outside and could burn with a permit. The second item that I wanted to share is our air quality analysis. For January, Thurston County had good air quality with a particulate matter 2.5 microns cubed of 29, and there was 1 day of moderate air quality. So, and one of the days the meter had stopped, so that didn't get recorded. However, because, as you know, wildfires are getting more and more because of climate change, Dr. Hadley showed us wildfire impacts on air quality. And most of our poor air quality, as you probably heard me say, is from wood stoves. But when you take out and look at the fire season, this is quite significant. So for smoke episodes, for daily average greater than 20 microns meter cubed in 2017, which was 10 days, wildfires smoke accounted for 13 to 15% of annual particulate matter of 2.5. In August 1st through the 3rd, 90% of it came from British Columbia. Then August 6th through the 10th, 90% also came from British Columbia. In September, though, of 5th through 6th, it came from California, Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia. And obviously, smoke just doesn't stop at the borders, it spreads. In 2018, there were 9 days. These were accounted for 23 to 25% of our bad smoke exposure. And most of these came from British Columbia, but some from Washington. And then in August 19th through 24th, most came from BC, but some from Washington. In 2020, which is 12 days, 38 to 40% of bad air quality was from smoke. That's really significant. And so from September 7th through September 18th, which is greater than 90%, came from Oregon and California, and 10% from Washington fires. So as you can tell, wildfires are causing more and more adverse air quality. And unfortunately, it doesn't stop, as I said, at the borders. And there is a YouTube presentation showing how the smoke engulfed us in 2020 on Orca's website. And you can really see how this huge balloon of smoke that was pushed out into the Pacific Ocean comes back and hovers over us. So I encourage you to go to their website and look at that. And that's my report.
Thank you. Next up is Councilmember Cox.
I have two reports for you. The Regional Housing Council met at 4:30 this afternoon. First order of business was to elect officers for this coming year. And we retained Olympia City Council member Jim Cooper as the chair, and County Commissioner Carolina Mejia will serve as vice chair. We had a robust discussion about pooling what's known as 1406 revenues. This is a sales tax revenue that the state allows cities and counties to retain to use for affordable housing projects. The council had previously agreed to pool these funds in order to have a greater collective impact with projects, but it was agreed after a good conversation that the city and county managers would come back to the Housing Council with a proposal clarifying regional versus local control of those dollars. So if Lacey had something they wanted to do with it, Lacey could do that. We also approved a plan for seeking applications for more than 8 million this year in local, state, and federal funds for housing and basic needs, and the criteria that will be used to score them. One significant change was we agreed to set aside $100,000 for senior housing, recognizing that that is a growing need in our area. The Housing Council Siting Committee expects to have a proposal at our next meeting for what they're calling scattered safe parking areas for people who live in vehicles. So rather than concentrating them in a larger area, they propose to have smaller places scattered all around the area. This program is going to place emphasis on garbage collection, sanitation, and intensive case management with the residents of these safe parking areas. And it's a pilot program to see if we really can make a difference in helping people out of living in their vehicles and into some more permanent form of housing. And finally, this will be of interest to our council. We've set a tentative new meeting time of the fourth Wednesday of the month from 4 to 5:30. This avoids the conflict with our council meetings. We're going to have to do a rescan of the membership just to make sure everybody's on board with it. And it's not going to knock a voting member out because they have conflict, but stay tuned. You will hear more about that. But I can say for certain that I think we are going to find a solution so that we don't conflict and have to have an odd time for our council meeting on the third Thursday. So Intercity Transit Authority met last night, and let's see, the biggest Lacey news is that we authorized the general manager to enter into an interlocal agreement with the city of Lacey, identifying processes, roles, and responsibilities related to the implementation of transit signal priority and smart corridors. And what this means is we've identified Martin Way as smart corridor and College Street as a smart corridor. And this would give, once everything is worked out, to both entity satisfaction, buses would be able to have some priority to get through an intersection. Like if the light is green as they're approaching, they could issue the signal and it would stay green long enough for the bus to get through the intersection. They would not have the same level of priority as an emergency vehicle, but this would be an incremental one that would help with transit service along the way. It would, and streamline considerably and keep buses rolling on time. So this is going to take a while to do, but good luck with that, Mr. City Manager.
I think we're all ready to go. I mean, all the jurisdictions should have the technology in place. It's just a matter of making sure the buses are talking to those control panels, and I think we should be good to go on that. Isn't that right, Mr. City Manager?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah, I talked to Scott Ager about this. I think we have a ILA that will be coming before council fairly soon.
Right. Yeah.
Great. Good news.
Yeah. We saw a draft of it last night, but yeah. Okay. We also authorized the general manager to negotiate final terms and enter into a contract with Avail Technologies for the new computer-assisted dispatching automatic vehicle location system for our vehicle fleet. And that contract is for $7.2 million. And this has been a long time coming for intercity transit. It takes, it's going to replace the existing program, which had replaced basically an old citizens ban program where drivers were talking with each other over citizens ban and talking over each other and all having to hear each other's conversations, and the dispatchers were, I mean, it was a mess. And so we've had this CAD program in place for a few years, and now we have this new generation of it that should improve communications with our buses considerably. We also authorized a contract with SPJ Alliance to design bus stop improvements. And let's see. I think that's the highlights. So
great.
That's my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Greenstein.
I have no report this evening.
And Councilmember Miller.
Yeah, I do have one. Thurston Trpc, Thurston Regional Planning met on February 5th, and we did have a briefing about the Thurston PUD, who has 275 water systems and 7,915 connections, starting to phase down their operation to focus more on just Thurston County, because they operate in 6 counties, 7 if you include the one water system in King County. But that is going to be scaled back to just Thurston County. So Thurston PUD has a lot of pretty big operation going there. A couple different reasons for that, I think, which are, some of those water systems built, way back in the 50s and 60s and 70s are going to fail and are going to need some major infrastructure. Secondly, there is a system that is going to be under their control as of March this year, which has about 1,700 connections. So it's kind of a switch out, dump those 1,794 and pick up these 1,730. Very similar size operation, or at least connections, but most likely less work. But the Thurston PUD did grow 28% between 2005 and 2016. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from that presentation. The phase down is a 10-year phase down, so it's not going to happen overnight. But in the next 10 years, they will let go of these other water systems that are outside of the county. And so, but they did share their mission statement with us. I don't know if you guys have heard it. It was my first time hearing it, but the mission has been and still is to conserve the water and power resources of the state of Washington for the benefit of the people thereof, and to supply public utility service, including water and electricity for all uses. Initially this was designed for them to basically take care of rural areas that didn't have the service of the urban areas. And it appears as if they've done a great job of that and now can scale back their operations a little bit. The second thing that I want to talk about was the billable lands update. As you guys know, in accordance with the GMA, the forecast was completed in 2019. The draft report was done in 2020, and the complete lands report is due out later this year so that it can be submitted in 2022. The city of Lacey has done pretty well in achieving some of the density goals. City of Olympia is only slightly higher, 4 points higher than us in achieving density goals. Rainier and Tenino and Tumwater and Yelm still have a ways to go, but they don't have, as dense city center and core as we do. A little harder to, devise a metric. Let's see. I think the big question was, are we on track for the amount of housing that we're going to need in the next 20 years? Well, the amount of buildable resources we're going to need over the next 20 years. And currently, with the incomplete information, the answer is yes, we are on track for the amount of housing and that we're going to need. I know it probably doesn't feel like that to a lot of us, in that, we have seen, our property taxes from the county go up a little bit, and we look at the market and see that we're all a little, we're low on inventory. There's no surprise there that, a lot of people are out looking and can't find, and we just don't seem to offer smaller dwellings at lower prices. And so hopefully we will be able to, pivot a little bit and make some of those things happen. But the primary focus is more on our sustainable targets. And our projections are nowhere near, well, I won't say nowhere near. On the chart, it kind of looks like nowhere near, but the truth is we're about 8 points off from where we're hoping to be by 2035. So we're projected to reach 87% of that goal, but without some changes and some adjustments, it appears as though right now that we're going to fall short. However, with things that are in play right now, some changes should help us to reach the goal that we're trying to get to, according to our sustainable goals that are under the GMA. So that is my report.
Thank you. I know that buildable lands issue is a big issue. I think all the urban areas, all of Thurston County really needs to focus on. I was having this really good conversation with Wade, like I said yesterday, and one of the things that we face here in Lacey is we have some older neighborhoods that are on bigger lots. And of course, whenever you talk about adding more density to your urban core, the big problem is that you have, no one wants to have a big 2-story house next to your 1-story home, and especially in these older neighborhoods. And so the thought was, we're just talking off the top of our heads, is what if we did allow some more density within those areas, but limited them to, say, under 1,800 square feet, or 1,600 square feet. And so that way you're not having 2-story homes. You're encouraging smaller homes that are now more affordable, that then doesn't completely take over a neighborhood, but does add more density. And so maybe we wouldn't get as much of a pushback from the neighborhoods if we allowed that type of housing in those neighborhoods. And so we're definitely going to need to come together and put our heads together and start thinking outside the box on how we can get some more affordable housing in our community. And maybe it's zoning along those lines. We've never seen zoning like that before, that specifically says, oh yeah, you can build housing, but it needs to be under a certain square footage. Besides, of course, our tiny home zoning that we've just approved today, that does address some of those things. But we're going to have some conversations, not only within the city, but as a region, on how we get some more affordable housing. in our community. So thank you for that, Malcolm.
So one of the things about that though is that some of us do have homes less than 1,300, but we have big yards and front yards as well as backyards because it's an older neighborhood, which you have to think about whether you need to get rid of your yard or something.
Oh yeah, and so the question is then do you allow, say, in your neighborhood, do you allow them to take down your house and build two 1,600 homes, right, on that same lot?
Yeah, exactly.
Build what up that is now doesn't become affordable housing, but can you anyway? Yeah. It just was conversations I was having with Wade, like, because I was trying to pick his brains, like, how are we gonna do this? And so anyway, we can go off and talk about that forever. Councilmember Stedman.
Thank you, Mayor. Community Action Council meets next week. They did inform me we do not have a finance committee meeting prior to that, which I chair. And I get a pretty extensive committee review on that last meeting. We had our audit. It was stellar again. It's been that way for forever, long before I got on there. So other than that, and Thurston County Law and Justice, they met right before we were meeting before our council meetings and when I was appointed. So that'll be next quarter. But I did want to take a point of personal preference real quick and give a shout out to my cousin Jack, polio survivor from 10 years old and a stroke victim. Recently he's had a couple strokes, and I just want to give him get better soon, Jack, and all that. Some people don't know it. Everybody around here probably knows Fred Goldberg that founded Tote Shipping. He's my cousin's best friend over in Ennis, Montana. I didn't know that. I just walked into Jack's one day and there's Fred Goldberg sitting at the table. I'm like, what is going on?
Oh.
The chair of the Evergreen State College Board for a lot of years, and big high up guy. But anyways, that's the community there. And to all polio or stroke victims, my cousin Jack was an old cowboy in Montana, with only half the use of his body, being a polio survivor, and he cowboyed on a horse and ranched and did all that stuff for well into his late 70s, and he's 85 now. So it just talks about the resilience of people and humanity in general, and that you can overcome obstacles no matter how big, as long as you're willing to put forth.
What's the world friend Fred Goldberg go Montana? Like, what are the chances of that happening?
Yeah, I know. I was like, what?
Yeah, that's crazy. So thank you. Appreciate that. Next up is Councilmember Kunkel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I have no report.
Well, then that means we've reached the end of our agenda. It's good seeing you all guys again. And I guess until next time, you keep it classy, Lacey, and I'll call this meeting adjourned. See ya.